Kamilyn Ball, welcome to the Women in Business Impact Lab podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
It is a pleasure to be with you. You're joining Angela Schill and myself. We're co-hosting this episode, and today we're going to be talking about the challenges and benefits you face as a working woman and mother. Now, I'm obviously not a working woman or mother. I do have a wife who's a working woman and mother. And I know both of you are working women and mothers, and it'll be really fun to have this conversation. I think I will chime in from time to time, probably trying to channel the experiences of my wife to add to the conversation, but it'll be a lot of fun. As we get started, I wanted to share Kamilyn's bio with everybody. Kamilyn Ball grew up in a small town of Afton, Wyoming. She attended Utah State University, where she received a Bachelor of Science degree in accounting. She then attended the University of Washington in Seattle to earn her Master's of Professional Accounting, specializing in taxation. After graduation, she began her professional career with Ernst & Young's tax practice in Seattle. She has spent the last 22 years working in various roles in the field of accounting. 12 of those years were spent with Ernst & Young in their global compliance and reporting tax group, starting as a staff and leaving as a senior manager. 2 years as a tax director at DaVita Healthcare, a public Fortune 500 company. 5 years at UVU as an accountant, adjunct instructor, professional in residence, and dean's executive in residence in the accounting department, teaching intro accounting classes, undergraduate and graduate tax courses, and overseeing the volunteer income tax assistant program, the VITA program. After teaching at UVU, she went to work as a partner at an outsourced accounting startup, and then moved on to her current role as a controller at Advice Media LLC, a digital marketing company located in Lehi. She's married and has 3 boys, 2 dogs, and a cat. She likes to travel, read, relax at the beach, and watch movies in her free time. Wonderful background. Thank you again so much for joining us. Anything else you would like to share by way of highlight or high level before we dive on into the conversation?
Nope, that's me in a nutshell. A lot of work and a little bit of free time and a lot of boys in my house. Luckily, my 2 dogs are girls because that's the only girls I could control. But the rest of it, I'm just surrounded by boys.
And for me, it was the opposite. I have 6 children. My first 4 were girls. So it was my wife, my 4 girls, and I. I never thought I would have a boy. I didn't even, I kind of thought at that point it wasn't even in the cards at all. So eventually we got a boy dog, and that was it. And then eventually I got 2 boys tailing at the end.
I love it.
Got to control what you can control.
It's funny because I have 1 daughter, 3 boys, and then the dog, of course, had to be a girl so that we have a little bit more control in the girl arena too.
Yep. Exactly. But no, I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited for the discussion today. It's definitely a topic that is very important to me, and something that I want to make sure all of anyone listening gets some benefit from it, but especially those aspiring women and girls that are starting their professional careers. So.
Well, thank you. And my first question to you is just asking, what are some of the challenges that you faced being over the past 20 years? I hear what you've done. It's a lot. And I imagine that would create an environment where a lot of challenges would surface for a variety of reasons. But what are some of those that you've been through or faced?
Yes. Yeah. So I want to start off a little bit from when I was younger, and kind of where my desire to be in the professional working world came from. Because I think that's helps people understand my viewpoint. But my mom worked my whole life. My dad worked. He owned a small business in a very small town. But she didn't necessarily work because she wanted to. She worked because she had to. But I grew up from the time I was little, until she passed away last year. She worked most of her life, and I watched her work. And my parents didn't have the greatest relationship, and her words of wisdom to me were always like, "Hey, you never know what's going to happen in your life. You should always be able to take care of yourself and any children that you might have." So it's kind of coming from a negative place of her cheerleading me to be a working woman. But I watched her work, and I just always knew from a young age that I wanted to work and I wanted to do something professional. And so I remember I actually in college had to write an essay for one of my English classes. And the topic that I picked was the benefits of working mothers on children. And I did an entire research project about that and got a really good grade on it. But I think it just was, and I grew up, in a predominantly LDS Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints town, and I went to Utah State. And so there's definitely that prevalent religious idea that a lot of working, or a lot of women stay home and take care of the kids. And so I fought against that from a very, very young age, especially in college. That was a weird topic for me to be talking about. But as soon as I got up into my first professional job at Ernst & Young, that was not in Utah, that was in Seattle. And it was very, very common. Like our graduating class was 50-50 male and female. Everybody went to work. And so it started off great. I had a lot of opportunities, but some of the benefits that I've seen, that was the question, right?
It was
Kind of got
challenges,
lost in my
challenges,
yeah.
but benefits work too.
Yeah, sorry,
So
I'll get to that
either or.
I got lost in my own little recording there. So some of the challenges I didn't experience right off the bat until I moved back to Utah. So at some point in my career, I moved back to Utah and was hit with that cultural issue, in Utah. And probably one of the biggest challenges I had when I was here at Ernst & Young is I had a partner that brought me into his office and sat me down and said, "Hey, I just went to a big partner meeting and there was, a speaker there that said something that I just thought it really opened my eyes and I wanted to share it with you." And I was like, "Oh, great. What?" And he said, "Well, she asked everybody in the audience, how many of us partners, if we had to go on a business trip with a female colleague or a colleague of the opposite sex, how many of us, our spouses, would have an issue with that?" And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, where are you going with this? And he's like, "I realized, my spouse has an issue with that." And it was right at that moment was the first time I felt the glass ceiling because of gender. Right. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to get promoted. Right. Because he isn't going to take me on the same business meetings that he's going to take my male colleague. He's not going to let me go on the same trips. He's not going to, there's going to be an issue with him giving me those same opportunities as he does with my male counterpart. And I was really disappointed. And it was the first time when I really felt that. So the way I dealt with that is I was like, okay, I kind of accepted it. I didn't push against it. And I just said, I need to get out of here. So I went back to Seattle, and that glass ceiling felt kind of lifted. I've been in Utah quite a few years of my career, and it's just always there. I've been in so many meetings where I'm the only female sitting at the table. You know, I'm the one expected that when the food is all done or the food needs to get ordered, it's just kind of the women will take care of it. So I don't know. I just have kind of accepted it and just like, I don't care. But I will say that on the opposite side, I feel like in the last 10 years or so, being a professional female has actually had advantages for me because of the focus on diversity and diversifying management and diversifying people in higher up positions. I've actually realized like I need to use that opportunity as much as I can, right? And don't be like, oh, I want to be just like all my male counterparts. Like, no, I've got, I'm a female. You guys, you're all males and there's only a few females. I have opportunities that you don't have. So at first it really bothered me. And I was just like, this isn't going to be fun. I'm going to be fighting against this my whole life. But if you look at it as, hey, I've got an advantage, it can be a benefit. So that's one thing I've learned is sometimes it benefits you to be not the same as everybody else.
Mhm. It's refreshing to hear that you've been able to see that shift, and that there is that focus on diversity. And looking back and seeing what my mother went through as a working woman in a highly male dominated environment, and she struggled with some things that you talked about in terms of just being able to go and do the things, and I've heard going to do the same things with the male colleagues. And I've seen that shift in my day. And that's a refreshing thing, that it can be, our diversity can be harnessed for good, and that we can all benefit from our uniqueness as well and what we bring to the table.
Yeah. And just the little things that I've noticed, like I don't golf. I don't ever want to golf. It used to be that there was a lot of golfing done in public accounting and accounting in general. That's where all the deals were made and the clients were solidified. And there was a while there when I was like, I'm gonna have to learn to golf, and I hate golf. And then I finally just kind of got to the point where I'm like, I don't want to golf. I don't want to go golf, right? I'm gonna have to do it another way. And as the diversity has shifted, I've also seen my client base was starting to shift, and there were more females making those decisions. And I had an advantage in connecting with those female decision makers than my male counterparts did, right? And so I started kind of exploiting that avenue of being able to have those conversations about, being a working woman and taking care of the kids at the same time and all those stresses that come with it. And so it was kind of fun to be on that side of it as the diversity started to shift, and the equality initiatives kind of came out, to be like, oh yeah, I'll take that client. I can totally relate to her, right? And my male counterparts were like, I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to be able to connect with that client. But one of the books I've read, I hope everybody has read it if this is a topic important to them, but it's Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg. Mm-hmm. And I think that book was so enlightening to me. And I actually had a male colleague, one of the partners, suggest it to me, and I'm really glad he did. And he read it too, and that was what impressed me the most. But it was like, yeah, this is it. Like it describes exactly what it's like, right? Where that typical, if you're too aggressive, then you get called a nasty name, right? But if you're too submissive, you don't get what you want. Mm-hmm. Whereas if men are more aggressive, they usually get what they want. If they're more submissive, then they're, just passed over. And so I've always think back to that book of, okay, where's that line, right? I don't want to be called the B word, but I want to get what I want. And I think for women, it's just a really, really hard balance that takes some trial and error and experiences to figure out how you walk that fine line that society has created.
That's such a good point.
And maybe, Angela, if I can share a little bit, first of all, trying to channel my wife here a little bit. She also is a university instructor, professor, has a doctorate. Her path just looked different than mine. Like I plowed through, I did everything all at once. She took time while having children, right? And so our timing was very different. And she put a lot of things on the back burner, right? For many years because of children and everything. She's definitely felt that. And as she started to get more into not only her schooling, but into her career, she's felt, I don't know what else to call it other than like the mom guilt. So that cultural component that you were describing, I think is a challenge that a lot of women face. And for her, even though, I'm a professor, I have a pretty flexible, autonomous job. I'm a very involved dad. I can help out with everything around the house and the children, and I do a lot. So, it's probably a really good situation for someone to not have to feel that much of that guilt, or to feel, torn in that way. Yet she absolutely did. And I remember the very first time she decided to go back and teach just as a part-time faculty member, while being, 80% at-home mom, doing a little bit of teaching on the side. And it was a really, really hard step for her to take, to get there, because she just felt that draw, and she felt the public and social pressure with all of that as well. Now from the side of the man, the spouse, the partner, I've noticed too, like these gendered stereotypes, these gendered norms, and the way how society is gendered in this way, it can negatively impact women. It also can negatively impact men. And not to make this about me, that's not what I'm trying to do, but there have been many times over the years where I've had people directly tell me to my face that I'm too much of a family man to be considered, for this or that or the other, because they know I'm an involved dad. They know that I'm prioritizing my family first and foremost. And I'm like, well, I'm pretty productive. I'm pretty accomplished, I think, not to toot my own horn too much. And I think I am, capable, and yet, I feel like I'm being not allowed an opportunity because of that, which is really kind of the flip side of the coin, right? To what you were describing from the female perspective. Either way, it's something that we just need to get rid of. It doesn't help the organization because they lose out on good people. It certainly doesn't help the people that are experiencing it. And I don't know what, like your example with the partner, talking about business trips and such, that's got to be so demoralizing.
Yeah.
To just come to that realization and to just, like I have this huge uphill battle. Now you've weathered that really well. It sounds like you had a really good, positive approach to dealing with it. But how did you handle either the blatant discrimination that you may have received over time, or even the subtle things, the microaggressions, like you said, just being expected to take notes in a meeting, or being expected to clean up the food after a meeting, or some of those types of things that probably nobody in the room is thinking about, but they just kind of assume that you'll just do it. All that kind of stuff, that's got to be so frustrating. How have you dealt with that over the years to remain positive and to leverage your femaleness as an asset?
Yeah. At first it used to anger me, and I used to be like trying to not be female, right? Trying to fit in, and want to do the golf, want to do understand what was going on with sports, to be able to have those conversations. And then at some point, I don't know when it was exactly, but I just know, like, over time, I just realized, like, that's fine. Like, let it go, let that go, and just channel your energy into being the best of the group, right? So the people that I was competing against and my colleagues, it's like, hey, it doesn't matter these little things, but what you do have, which clients you do have, whether they're female or male or whatever, you just be the best, right? So that there's no choice except for them to recognize you, not because you're female, not because they're male, but just you are the best performer. And that's really where I kind of directed my efforts, is just like, culture is what it is, and it's going to take a lot more than just me to change that. So I just have to prove that I am competent, and I am extremely competent, and have the soft skills, have the presentation skills, have the credentials behind me, to be able to back that up. And if I get a foot in the door because, I'm female and they're trying to diversify, then I'll take it. I'll take that as a win. But really just being totally and completely competent, so that there's no question, and it doesn't come down to, and if somebody's discriminated against me and I don't know about it, it is what it is. And another opportunity has opened, and, a door has opened that, and I don't even know, that they did that, but I'm sure it's happened more than I know.
What about pay gap? Is that an area that you've noticed anything, and how have you faced that one when that there's a little bit of a differentiation?
Yeah, I just kind of assume that there's always a pay gap issue on a gender basis. Some of my employers have been really good about, you have no idea, because nobody knows what the ranges are and who's got what unless you talk. And I didn't like to get into those conversations because they're never productive. But I just kind of assume going in that there just is an inherent bias. And I think it's mostly because, you know, men just are better most of the time at just being like, this is what I need.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And they just seem to, and it's just, they're good at it, and society accepts it. Right. Because that is the stereotype of man, is they're, bold and they're aggressive, and that's how men are supposed to be. And so I just again focus on competency, right? If I'm competent, then, and I know that I've done a great job, then I don't have any issues going and asking for something.
Mm-hmm.
That I kind of accepted that it's there, right? And instead of getting mad about it and wasting my energy on, trying to confirm that it's there and how much is it, and I just get what I need and make sure I'm comfortable with what I have and the amount of money I'm making, and just have my expectations set from there, right? So not probably the greatest answer, but I just know it exists, and it's going to exist.
Well, it sounds like you've taken your power back by seeing where you have control, where you can be influencing the outcomes and focusing there, and then finding the best results from doing that, rather than looking outside of will take a long time to turn that ship, I think.
Yes.
Redirect that conversation. But if you had advice talking about turning the ship, and as we're making these shifts and changes, and it's been enlightening to hear what you've had to share, and also John, and just seeing the shift in how he parents and how he supports, as well as a wonderful male ally. What is the advice that you would give to both male and female, younger generation coming up through the ranks and stepping into this business world?
So the advice I'd give to the upcoming females is, if you want to work and you have a goal, a professional goal, just go for it. Like, try to set aside the cultural norms, try to set aside the cultural bias, try to set aside those silly comments that come your way, and just go for it. I will say that, when people ask me, why do you work? Right? The answer I always give them is, it's not about the money for me. That's a perk. But it has just always been, I needed something that was mine. Because when you're a mom and even a woman, you give so much of yourself to everything else around you and everybody else around you.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, I need something that's mine. And that has been my professional career. So if that's what you want and that's what you need, great. Maybe it'll change down the road, maybe it won't. But while you have it, go for it. And your kids will be fine. Kids are resilient. We don't give them enough credit, right? They're going to be fine. They're not going to know any different. For the male, side of, be supportive. Whoever it is in your life that's going for that professional goal, just be supportive. Find out where you can support them. If that's more at home, if that's more, I don't know, flexibility in your job, just be supportive. That's all you can do, and always have that female colleagues back, and look at them for their competence and not for their gender, right? Yeah, I think that's the advice I would give.
That's some pretty solid advice.
Yeah.
John, do you have any more questions?
I do. I have lots, but I also note the time, and I know that we're going to have to let you go so you can get on with your busy day here in just a bit. So maybe we'll have to put a pin in it for today, but we'd love to have you back at some point and we can continue the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Before we wrap things up for today, Cami, just wanted to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can connect with you, find out more about your work, and then give us the final word on the topic for today.
Yep. So you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Just look up Kamilyn Ball on LinkedIn, Cami Ball, and it should be on there. Or you can reach out to me personally on my personal email, and that's KAMIBALL@hotmail.com, which shows you how old I am because I still have a Hotmail account. But yeah, this is a topic that, I'm passionate about and want all of all of the working women out there to succeed and not feel that mommy guilt and, you know, go for what they want. So if anyone wants to connect, I'd be happy to talk with anyone.
Amazing.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Cami. It's been a pleasure. We encourage everyone in the audience to reach out, get connected, find out more about what Cami is up to, find out what she can do for you. And as always, we hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And we hope you all have a great week.